Brothers and sisters, Brother John here, watchman for that great day. Today I'm going to go over a little known or a well known to some prophecy by a Jewish rabbi by the name of Judah ben Samuel. And you might have heard of him and you might not have. If you haven't, you're in for a treat. And even if you have, because I love this prophecy is awesome because it puts us at a man that made this prophecy did it, and it was 300 years after he died, so he had no way of knowing for sure that this thing would take place, but he apparently gave interviews and whatever at the time, and it's been passed along. But this man, his name is Judah ben Samuel. All right, so here we go. I'm going to start to read it. So Judah ben Samuel was a legendary and prophetic German rabbi in the 12th century who made some astonishing and specific predictions about the future of Jerusalem and Israel that are coming true. Judah ben Samuel, also known as Judah Hasid, Judah the Pious, lived and worked from the end of the 12th century until the beginning of the 13th century in Remsenburg, authoring a number of books in the German language. Ludwig Schneider of Israel Today magazine has translated some of his work into English over the last few years, including the Book of Pious, Sefer Hasidim, and the Book of Calculations, Sefer Gematria. And following the Christian Crusades to the Holy Land between 1096 and 1270, a regular correspondence developed between the Jews in the Holy Land and the Christian West. Thus, for example, the rabbis in Worms and Remsenburg, Germany, knew that Saladin Abids, which is a leader, an Islamic leader, had been ruling in the Holy Land since 1187. So at this time, Judah ben Samuel published results of his biblical calculations, Gematria, and astrological observations, and summarized as follows. This is his prophecy. So, when the Ottoman Turks, who were already a power to be reckoned with on the Bosphorus, in the time of Judah ben Samuel, conquered Jerusalem, they will rule over Jerusalem for 8 Jubilees. Now this is interesting because we're in the Jubilee year, and this is a prophecy that was given, and we're going to see how it connects, and we're going to be able to get from his prophecy a timeline that relates to where we are. All right, so afterward, Jerusalem will become no man's land. So it was for 8 Jubilees, which a Jubilee is 50 years, so it's 400 years that the Ottoman Turks would rule Jerusalem. Okay, after that, 1 Jubilee for 50 years, it would be no man's land for 1 Jubilee. And then in the 9th Jubilee, it would become once again back into the possession of the Jewish nation, which would signify the beginning of the Messianic end time. So they're saying in 1967, all right, because this is where it goes, all right. Let me read on. So 1 Jubilee is 50 years, Leviticus 25. It is the 50th year after 7 times 7 years, the year in which every person should regain ownership of his or her land, and that's what he says. So Ben Samuel's calculations were purely theoretical. There was absolutely no sign at the time of their being fulfilled. He himself was not able to experience their fulfillment, for it was only 300 years after his death that the first of his predictions were to come true. 300 years after someone's death, there's no way he could have known 300 years unless he was given something from God or a view into the future. All right, and this is not impossible because these are the scriptures that we read, and these men in the Bible had view into the future. All right, so that's important to remember, that when we're talking about people getting understanding and giving prophecy, prophecy is nothing more than them seeing as God allows them to see into the future. Okay, so the Mamelukes, who had been reigning in Jerusalem since 1250, were conquered in 1517 by the Ottoman Turks. They remained for 8 Jubilees, 8 times 50, 400 years. That is to say, they were in Jerusalem for 400 years. Exactly 400 years later, in 1917, the Ottoman Turks were conquered by the British. The League of Nations conferred the mandate for the Holy Land and Jerusalem to the British. Thus, from 1917, under international law, Jerusalem was no man's land. Okay, so for 50 years from 1917, right? 1917 is when the Ottoman Turks gave up after 400 years, after 50 Jubilees. Then, when Israel captured Jerusalem in the Six-Day War in 1967, exactly 1 Jubilee, or 50 years after 1917, Jerusalem reverted to Jewish Israel ownership once again. Thereby, according to the prophecies of Judah ben Samuel, the Messianic end times began. So imagine that. So 1967, after the Six-Day War. Remember, they had to be a nation again. They had to be back in the nation of Israel, and that was 1948. Okay? But this is an interesting connection because it's connecting Jubilees. So we can know that this is the Jubilee because of how his remarkable prophecy of 8 Jubilees taking place where the Ottoman Turks would rule, and then 1 Jubilee from 1917 to 1967, right? So that's how we know that the Jubilee connects, all right? He's talking about Jubilees, so he had an idea when these Jubilees were if he was connecting them, okay? So many scholars have studied and made reference to Judah ben Samuel's writings in an effort to understand how he reached his conclusions. Among those referencing Ben Samuel, and these are all the different rabbis. I'm not going to read all the rabbis, but there's a ton of them. But at least there's, they give them the different times with these different rabbis. So there was a rabbi from 1531 to 1572 that studied, how he came to these conclusions, and I would have to say he probably agreed to this. Remember, this is just at the edge. See, Judah ben Samuel himself died 300 years before 1200s, before even the Ottoman Turks started to rule. So he had no way of knowing this. He had to have some kind of insight into the future. So then now we're talking about these different rabbis that had studied how Judah ben Samuel studied and tried to come to the understanding, and I guess they did. This one rabbi was from 1531 to 1572, another rabbi from 1591 to 1655, another one from 1724 to 1806, another guy from 1800 to 1865. These men were studying their whole lives and how we came to these understandings, and they had to conclude at this time they're entering into that time the Ottoman Turks are ruling. Okay, so they're watching this progress as they come along and study these things. So this is not just an out there guy that just happened to make a prophecy. This was an interesting connection. So it all comes down to all goes all the way to 1993. The last guy, the scholar Jacob Epstein, Torah scholar Jacob Epstein, studied from 1925 his whole life, 1925 to 1993. All right, so this was amazing. These men understood what this Rabbi Judah ben Samuel was saying. Amazing, right? Whole groups of men, and it was taught. So now, the secret of how Judah the Pious, which is the name of Judah ben Samuel that he was given, arrived at such accurate predictions has less to do with the actual calculations than it does with the fact that he consecrated his life to God. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. When you consecrate your life to God and give God your life, that's quite a thing. You're giving everything up. Only God. It's only God. Eat, sleep, breathe, drink. God. All right? God, 24 hours a day. God. All right? Denying everything else, the flesh and everything. All right? So, and amazing, and I'm not sure whether this Judah ben Samuel knew Christ or not, but we're going to read something in a little while. I'll go over it with you the way it looks. Okay. So anyway, these men studied, and he dedicated his whole life to God. All right. His pupils, Rabbi Isaac ben Moses, Rabbi Barak ben Samuel, Rabbi Shimsha Spray, testified that Ben Samuel was a model of abstinence and selflessness and was awaiting with a burning desire the coming of Messiah. Isn't that what we all are, brothers and sisters? We're all waiting we have a burning desire to see our Lord Jesus. Amen? This is where the end of this article is awesome. So I'm getting there. So Ben Samuel was often called Light of Israel. When bishops came to him for advice, so regular people, not just rabbis, but bishops, I guess, different theologians came to him and asked for advice. If anyone asked him where his wisdom came from, he would answer, the prophet Elijah. Now that's interesting, and that's why I'm going to tell you in a second. So the prophet Elijah, who will precede the Messiah, appeared to me and revealed many things to me and emphasized that the precondition for answered prayer is that it is fueled by enthusiasm and joy for the greatness and the holiness of God. How do you like that? Is that great? So he spoke of his burning desire to see the Messiah come, and he dedicated his life to God. Isn't that what we all should do, brothers and sisters? We dedicate our lives, right? And with that, we trust him for everything, and we're good to go. Doesn't mean you don't go again, have trials and tribulations in your life, but it just means that you trust totally in God, and God will always bless you and keep you from all harm, and that's just good to know. So, all right. But to recap, let's go back and recap. But to recap the astonishing predictions, in AD 1217, this scholarly and pious rabbi prophesied that the Ottoman Turks would rule over the holy city of Jerusalem for 8 Jubilees. Now, keep in mind that he made this prediction 300 years before the Ottoman Turks seized control of Jerusalem in 1517. If indeed 1217 and 1517 were Jubilee years, as Judah ben Samuel believed, then this prophecy was exactly right, because exactly 400 years after the Turks took control of Jerusalem, they were driven out of the city and the Holy Land in 1917 by the Allies, by the Allied forces under the command of General George Allenby on Hanukkah, by the way, on Hanukkah, all right? That brings in the whole other story with the Maccabees and the whole thing, regaining Jerusalem, okay? There's a whole thing with that. I'm going to stick with the story here. So, but it gets more interesting still, all right? How can it get more interesting? Well, it is. The rabbi also prophesied that during the 9th Jubilee, Jerusalem would be a no man's land. This is exactly what happened from 1917 to 1967, because it was a Jubilee year in 17, and then 1967 was another Jubilee. All right, that was from Jubilee to Jubilee. So from 9th to the 67 was the 9th Jubilee, 17 to 67. Okay, so due to the fact that the Holy Land was placed under British mandate in 1917 by the League of Nations and literally belonged to no nation. Right? Even after Israel's War of Independence in 1948 and 49, Jerusalem was still divided by a strip of land running right through the heart of the city, with Jordan controlling the eastern part of the city and Israel controlling the western part of the city. that strip of land was considered and even called no man's land by both Israelis and Jordanians. It was not until the Six-Day War in 1967 when the entire West Bank of the Holy Land was conquered by the Israeli army that the whole city of Jerusalem passed back into the possession of Israel. So once again, the prophecy was made by the rabbi 750 years previously was fulfilled to the letter. That's amazing, all right? Amazing. Remember, the man died 300 years before this, and so he had no way of knowing, and then it was a 750-year, from the time he prophesied it, it was 750 years to this point, to 67, hitting on the Jubilees perfectly, all right, which tells us that this year is the Jubilee. That's important to know. It certainly would be significant if both 1917 and 1967 were Jubilee years, considering the significance of what happened in Jerusalem those years. But it gets even more interesting. All right, now we're getting into it. So it gets even more interesting because Judah ben Samuel also prophesied that during the 10th Jubilee, Jerusalem would be under control of the Jews and the Messianic end times would begin. If he is right, then the 10th Jubilee began in 1967 and will be concluding, this is the finish line of that Jubilee, 2017. All right, so that's really all you need to know. With that, you know that we're in the Jubilee year, because this is not by accident. All right, everything has a purpose and a plan, and God is pointing out and giving us adequate information of the time and the season. And remember, no man knows the day or the hour, and that is literally the day or the hour. Doesn't mean we won't know the year at the very least. And it doesn't mean we won't know the month at the very least. Once we get in closer, okay? Because the year, it's great to know the year, the Jubilee year. But now what we're doing is we're in the Jubilee year. When's it going to happen in the Jubilee year? Is it going to happen on any of the feasts? All right? Well, so far we're past the feasts of atonement, actually Rosh Hashanah, Atonement, and Tabernacles for the Jubilee year. Actually, we can't actually say that because that would be 2017. That would be the Jubilee year starts on the 10th day, which is Atonement. Okay, so it started on Atonement. Okay, so far we've got Tabernacles of this year is already gone. Of the Jubilee year, it's gone. Because the Atonement was 10 days after the first of the year, and Atonement, the 10th day, is when the Jubilee trumpet is sounded and the Jubilee begins. So to make it end on a Jubilee, it has to go all the way to Tabernacles, actually to like October, I believe it's the 13th, okay? Something like that. Or the third, wait, is it the 3rd? So 23, let me count it out. Yeah, it's the 3rd of October. This year, this coming year, the 3rd of October would be the 10th day, which would be Atonement, which is when it would finish the Jubilee. The Jubilee would have to finish on the complete year, would be the 3rd of October. That's important to know. All right. But if it started this year on the 3rd of October, again, it goes a whole year, so there we go. The 3rd of October next year is the 10th day because the 23rd is Rosh Hashanah. So you got 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 30 days of September. 1, 2, 3. There you go. The 10th day is the 3rd of October. And it was this year, too, according to the Jewish calendar. The 3rd of October was Rosh Hashanah, I believe. Was it Rosh Hashanah? I can't remember. It was actually longer. I think it was more like the 13th. I think it was the 13th was the 10th day, which would have been Atonement this year. Now I get confused. Anyway, the whole bottom line is we're in the Jubilee. There's evidence to point to it all over the place. This rabbi that never should have been able to even see something that was going to happen 300 years, but yet he was talking, he said he was visited by Elijah. Now isn't that interesting? Let me get back to the part where it says he saw visited with Elijah. asks, how he did all this, what he say. Let's see, here it is. The prophet Elijah, who will precede the Messiah. When asked him where his wisdom came from, he would answer, the prophet Elijah, who will precede. So the prophet Elijah supposedly gave him insight into what would happen in the future. So could it be that, how it says Elijah must first come, right? Maybe he appeared unto this rabbi. I mean, it's possible. I wouldn't say it's not possible, because remember, Elijah never died. He was taken up. So he very well could have appeared to this rabbi, especially since this rabbi had dedicated his life. So who knows what errands God sends prophets that have been taken up, like Enoch, okay? Enoch or Elijah, that never died, that are still literally in a body, I imagine. Of course, it must be a bit of a glorified body to be able to be taken into the other realm. But it's very interesting. So anyway, if this prophet Elijah did appear to him, he would have known that who Jesus was, right? Because once you're in that realm, you know who the Son of Man is, okay? So is it possible, this is my question, is it possible Judah ben Samuel, maybe he recognized the Messiah, all right? Maybe he recognized before he died, since he had all this information from Elijah, and Elijah knew who Jesus Christ was, okay? He never died, but he's been up there in the time of Jesus. So that's just an interesting thought. Maybe this rabbi knew who Jesus Christ was before he died. Maybe he never said anything to his fellow rabbis, but he surely seems to have this insight. So it was interesting, that little part there. And I also find it interesting that at the end of this article, where it says that they would control. Remember this now? In 1967, they gained control over Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, okay, and the West Bank and all that. But the area of concern here is Jerusalem. Now we know today they still don't have total control, and the most important thing in Jerusalem is that Temple Mount. All right, that's, to them, that is the most important thing, and that little piece of land on top of that mountain, all right, Mount Moriah. And so 1967 they regained control, and they were ready to blow up the mosque that was on the Temple Mount. And they were told no, they couldn't do it. Now this brings us back to my connection to Daniel and Daniel's 70 weeks. And my brothers and sisters, Daniel's 70 weeks just keeps on nipping at my ankles here, because it keeps bringing me back. So every time I'm thinking, well, the 70 Feast of Weeks, that is one of the definitions of weeks, is a Shabuah, and one of the definitions is, out of the three, Feast of Weeks, multiple of sevens or 7. And so we're looking at the Feast of Weeks as absolutely being fulfilled as of May 31st and June 1st. And what will happen, I can't tell you, but it sure seems like rapture to me anytime before. Okay? Not saying we have to go right to that day, and I've said that before, and I made my last couple of videos, or at least the last one that I made, the message from Amos chapter 8. That's another thought, and we're heading into the time of finding out if the barley is going to be Aviv, which is going to place us in a particular timeline with when we'll know that Passover is going to happen. So basically, with all this that I'm saying, stay tuned. Keep your eyes on your Lord Jesus Christ. All right, He loves you. I love you. I'm thankful for each and every one that watch me, and I'm glad to come to you and share, different things that I'm finding and think are interesting, and I hope that you'll find them interesting too. And that's why I do this. But not, I do this more so that you'll get a blessing from and encouraged by by what I'm saying, because it's not just me saying it. It's what the scriptures are telling us, the meaning of the scriptures. You know, you can't change the meaning. All right? If the word means Feast of Weeks, then that is a viable understanding. So Feast of Weeks is important, and that's where we're at. The 70 Feast of Weeks will be absolutely fulfilled as of May 31st, June 1st. So keep looking up, brothers and sisters. I love you very, very much. You know, you guys bless me. You are a blessing to me. So with that, Brother John, watchman for that great day, out.